Hello, I'm Chen Kang. Today, I'm going to talk about variation theory in education. In this video, I will introduce what is variation theory, critical aspect, dimension, and critical feature, the three key concepts in variation theory, pattern of variation, examine object learning in variation theory, and finally, I will compare variation theory with some other learning theories. First, what is variation theory? Variation theory is a type of learning theories. According to Encyclopedia of Science of Learning, variation theory is a theory of learning and experience that explains how a learner might come to say, understand, or experience a given phenomenon in a certain way. In variation theory, there are critical aspects of a given phenomenon that the learner must simultaneously be aware of and focus on in order to experience that phenomenon in a particular way. The phenomenon here is also called object learning. For a very simple example, in order to learn identify a red apple, the learner have to identify several important aspects of the apple, like the apple's color, if it is red enough, the apple size, if it is big enough, and the apple's flavor, if it is sweet. So the color, size, and flavor of apple are three critical aspects of identify red apple. So these are critical aspect and phenomenon or object learning in variation theory. Now, I'm going to introduce three key concepts in variation theory: critical aspect, dimension, and critical features. Those three terms are really important in variation theory. All research that's using variation theory will all mention about those three terms. And they are closely related but different, so I have to clarify them. First, critical aspect. As I have showed in last examples, the color, size, and the flavor are critical aspect of identify red apple. So the critical aspects are different important elements of the learning object. While the next one is dimension. Each critical aspect has a corresponding dimension, which could be viewed as the axis of variation. Well, in terms of critical aspect of flavor, actually there is a dimension of variation of flavor from no sweet to sweet. It's like the axis of variation, so that is a dimension. Next one is critical feature. Each critical aspect has a feature with a particular meaning, which the learning needs to be aware of as it is a necessity to the learning. Well, keep the last examples. In the dimension of variation of flavor, from sour to sweet. The point sweet is actually the critical feature of identify red apple. So that is critical feature. It's like a point on the axis of the variation. Well, here I just summarize what I said before in that examples that we can see in this table that would be more clear. In the case that when the object learning is identify a red apple, what are critical aspects, what are dimensions, and what are critical features. Okay, next, I'm going to introduce pattern of variation. Well, in variation theory, there is a significant pattern of variation to describe the change of learner's perception during the whole process of learning. In 2004, Martin and Tway describe the pattern of variation in 4 steps: contrast, separation, generalization, and fusion. First, contrast. Contrast, the learner is aware of phenomenon through comparing it with something else. Well, for example, now the object learning is to learn price hike. So in this stage, learner need to, through examples, to identify, oh, in some examples, the price went up, while in others, the price did not went up, but did not go up. So if learner can realize the difference between the price go up and the price not go up, they have experienced the stage of contrast. The next one is separation. The object learning is separated as several critical aspects. In order to discern a certain critical aspect, the learner needs to experience variation in the dimension of each aspect. Well, the second sentence is very important. In this stage, it's what educator, which means that what educator need to do is that they need to separate the object learning as several critical aspects. Still the example of the price hike. And what can cause the price hike? There are 2 reasons, supply and consumption. So the supply will be one critical aspect and consumption will be another critical aspect. And what educator need to do is show the learner that each critical aspect. For example, the learner will experience the supply, the increase and decrease of a supply and consumption as is invariant at this time. And then the learner experiences the increase and decrease of consumption and supply is invariant. And the next stage is generation. The learner generalizes assemblies from a group of examples with the same phenomenon. So through the learner experience, those examples, they can realize that when the supply is increasing, the price will decrease. When supply is decreasing, and the price will increase. Also, the learner will generalize the same thing about the relationship between consumption and price when supply is invariant. Finally, as well as the last step, the fusion, the learner experience the variation of dimensions of multiple critical aspects simultaneously. So in this step, the 2 critical aspects, supply and consumption, will both be changed. And in this environment, the learner needs to say how the price goes. And that is the last step, fusion. Of course, this is only one way to talk about pattern of variation, and the order of pattern of variation is not fixed as here. Some researchers also talk about the pattern of variation in fusion, contrast, separation, generation, and fusion. The first fusion means actually is students is just came across the object learning and the learner have no idea about it. So that period is fusion. And some researcher will also talk about the pattern variation in contrast, generation, and fusion without separation, because the separation is a part that educator or teacher engaged rather than learner. And what learner experience is what researcher or teacher or educator they already separate. They already separated, and the learner generalize them. So they will say that the pattern variation is a contrast, generalization, and fusion. In my opinion, separation is a part that we can't ignore it, but it's actually in a specific classroom that it happened with the generation together because we already separate say before the lesson and we show it to learner. So the learner actually the pattern of variation should be the contrast, separation, and generalization. And finally is fusion. So that is my opinion. Next, examine object learning. Well, the object learning is examined by people from three different perspectives: intended object learning, enacted object learning, and lived object learning. Well, intended object learning is describes the object learning from the teacher's viewpoint. It's like to say what was intended to be learned, what teacher wants learner to learn. The next one is enacted object learning. This is to talk about object learning from the view of researcher. It's a description of what is varied and what remain invariant. So in the classroom, it's to say what is possible to learn based on the variation of dimension experience in the classroom. And last one is lived object learning. It's to see the object learning from the view of learner, to say what was learned at the end. So the people, we often compare lived object learning with intended object learning and enacted object learning, especially enacted object learning, to say what learning possibilities were taken advantage of by learners. Finally, what's the difference between variation theory and some other learning theories? Here I list 4 typical learning theories: behaviorism, cognitivism, and constructivism, and humanism. Well, the first one, behaviorism. As we know that behaviorism is the oldest learning theories, which emphasize stimuli and responses to regulate learner's behavior. However, behaviorism have a problem is that it does not to show how learner process the information when information go into learner's mind. So that is a problem. Well, the cognitivism and the constructivism deal with this problem. They discuss and describe a very detailed the learner's internal thought process. Although they use in different way that cognitivism talk about describe the learning process as the information processing model that like from short memory to long memory, and constructivism emphasize the knowledge building as the is constructed based on the prior experience. But anyway, these two learning theory, they both describe a detailed and whole process of learning. However, these two learning theories, they do not talk about too much about how object learning is learned by the learner I mean, from the view of object learning rather than from the learner's view. In this case, variation theory have the advantage. The variation theory describe that they analyze object learning as several critical aspects, and how each critical aspect is experienced by the learner. So actually, the variation theory is more like an object learning centered learning theory, and while the cognitivism and constructivism is like the learner centered learning theory. So if you want to make some research, it's about the presentation of the object learning. It's like to do research about example, textbooks, or some other learning or teaching materials. Variation theory would be quite useful. The last one is humanism. Well, humanism is emphasize learning from the view that's needs of human beings, rather than describe a very detailed about a specific learning theory, specific learning process. So its direction is totally different from a variation theory. Well, this is a variation theory that I introduced today. Thank you.